This video will feature some JJK manga spoilers. You've been warned. I don't think I need to state that Satoru Gojo is the most powerful character in all of Jujutsu Kaisen, or I guess you could say he's just merely the most unbeatable character in the series. We're talking about a character so powerful that his mere birth shifted the power balance of the entire Jujutsu Kaisen world. Immediately, bounties were put onto Gojo's head because of the sheer innate talent and potential that he possessed. His power so high that even Toji needed to travel to go see what Gojo was all about as a little boy. And despite being a mere child, Gojo was able to notice that Toji was following him, showing the sheer native talent that Gojo possessed even from a young age. While Gojo seems literally unbeatable because of his 6 eyes, limitless, and infinity, he can be beaten. As in the Shibuya arc, an entire plan was devised by Kenjaku to seal Gojo away within the prison realm, and that worked. Despite Gojo being the most iconic character in all of Jujutsu Kaisen, he's actually been sealed away for the large majority of the series now, as Gojo was sealed away in chapter 91, and as of right now, me scripting this, we are on chapter 217. And he's still sealed inside of the prison realm, just chilling there. I've seen that many in the fandom believe that once Gojo is unsealed, it will be a triumphant return into the series for him, and he'll defeat some sort of penultimate villain before the final boss of JJK. Others believe that he'll return just to die, but I believe it's fairly possible that neither of these things happen, at least solely to themselves. See, I believe that Gojo will return, and sure, maybe he will have some triumphant victories when he does break from the prison realm, but I don't think it will be all sunshine and rainbows. No, I believe that Gojo could fall down a dark path that could lead to him ending up being the true final villain of the Jujutsu Kaisen series, a threat perhaps even greater than Ryomen Sukuna, the King of Curses. So please follow me as I tell you about my theory on why and how Gojo will fall to the curses and become the final villains of Jujutsu Kaisen. I'm going to start by saying that this is something that I've been thinking about for a while now, as years ago when I reread the beginning of JJK, I saw the Sukuna versus Gojo fight as a sort of prelude to what the final battle will really entail. Now, when you're doing your first read-through of Jujutsu Kaisen or watching the anime first, this fight really isn't anything of note because you barely understand the context of Ryomen Sukuna as a character than JJK, and the same goes for Gojo. This fight happens early on in chapter 2 of the series, but as I said, reading this chapter after being well into the series, this really is quite the matchup. Ryomen Sukuna, known as one of, if not the most powerful cursed entities in all of Jujutsu Kaisen, versus Satoru Gojo, the most powerful Jujutsu sorcerer in the series. Now, of course, this was really only Yuji with one of Sukuna's fingers inside of him, so Sukuna wasn't even close to a small fraction of his power, so it wasn't really a true clash that we would hope to see one day. Gojo could essentially toy with Sukuna, but this has made me think for a long time that at some point these two must clash at their full powers. But furthermore, Gojo himself has put an emphasis on other characters, eventually surpassing his seemingly insurmountable power. He's said this about Yuji, Yuta, Megumi, and Hikari. All 4 of these characters stated by Gojo himself to have the potential to surpass him. It's always made me wonder why Gojo seems so adamant, almost like he's obsessed with gathering characters that have the ability to surpass him. By proxy, this means that Gojo is gathering people with the ability to defeat him. But why is Gojo so obsessed with finding people with the potential to surpass him? Well, it could just be that he wants to create other pillars in Jujutsu society to help revolutionize its archaic culture, or it could be a much darker reason. There could be confounding variables as well. As we know, Gojo has been the target of Jujutsu society. Ever since he was born, bounties were placed on his head because his own potential was deemed dangerous. His very birth shifted the entire balance of Jujutsu society. That's a lot of pressure for a single person to take in, let alone a child. It's quite possible that Gojo wants Yuji, Megumi, Yuji, and Hikari to surpass him so that he will be relieved of some of that pressure, so that people don't see just him as this dangerous threat, but they could see the 5 of them as a dangerous threat, and therefore, a lot of that pressure is siphoned away from him. This would be Gojo's own attempt of preventing himself from snapping and becoming like Sukuna, a former sorcerer turned cursed spirit, or his former friend, Suguru Geto. Or maybe this is a double purpose. The actualized potential of these 4 could lead to not only a prevention of Gojo snapping, but also if he does snap, these 4 would have the potential of saving the world by stopping Gojo. When you add everything together, I believe that Akutami has actually provided some foreshadowing for this to be possible, and there is more to go over, especially when you analyze Gojo as a character and look at Gojo as the final villain. It would be a very interesting subversion in my opinion. Of course, there are a lot of possible issues regarding this hypothetical outcome or match. As of right now, an evil Gojo versus a Yuji who mastered Sukuna's power cannot happen, as 1, Gojo is currently sealed away, so he cannot even participate in this fight, and 2, Gojo's not evil. How in the hell is he going to be the one to fall in the darkness to become the final boss? And 3, if Gojo does go evil, why would he fight Sukuna, who is also evil? But this will lead to a 4th problem that I will get back to later, once I answer these previous questions. Okay, sure, Gojo is sealed away in the prison realm, so as of right now, there's no way he can break himself out and then become the final villain of JJK. But don't forget that one of the main quests that Yuji is on right now is using Hana Kurus's ability to extinguish cursed techniques so that they can open the back of the prison realm to free Gojo. So the number 1 is pretty much already answered. Once the current events of the manga are resolved, they can use the angel's ability to save Gojo and bust him out of prison. Issue number 2 is that Gojo is not evil, which yeah, he pretty clearly is not evil, but that doesn't mean he can't suffer from a fall from grace. I mean, this actually happened to his former colleague and best friend, Suguru Geto. Remember that Geto started with a bright future as a Jujutsu sorcerer, being Gojo's greatest comrade in the flashback arc before falling into the darkness of cursed energy and becoming the villain of Jujutsu Kaisen Volume 0. It very well could be Akutami's plan for Gojo to follow in similar footsteps. Here are my reasons as to why I believe that Gojo can have his fall. Now first, I do want to admit that Jujutsu Kaisen is a story that doesn't have a lot of black and white morality. Even the good guys of JJK, the Jujutsu sorcerers who are meant to protect regular human society, will advocate for many things that seem contradictory to their purpose. So it is possible that some of these things that I will mention about Gojo is merely just me looking far too into it as a morally gray character. One of the characteristics ingrained within Gojo, and it's made very clear from the start, is power. Gojo is the most powerful character in Jujutsu society. Donning the 6 eyes and wielding Limitless allows him for some of the most broken abilities and techniques, and him belonging to one of the big 3 clans signifies that he has a large pool of cursed energy to coincide with it. As we know, both in our life and in the JJK world, power corrupts. Not just power as in how much cursed energy one possesses, but the authority that one holds as well. And even worse, these corruptions can in fact lead to a god complex, which we do know for a fact that Gojo possesses. There is a phrase in JJK and Buddhism that goes, "Throughout heaven and earth, I alone am the honored one." This is the phrase that Buddhist monks believe Buddha uttered upon reaching the enlightenment stage of nirvana. Considering the massive amounts of Buddhist themes and symbolism present within JJK, it can be seen that in Gojo's state of euphoria upon leveling up his powers in his fight with Toji, that the echoes of strength made him believe that he was on the same level as the Honored One. There's another character in JJK referred to as the Honored One in a nearly identical statement of Gojo's, and that is Ryumin Sukuna himself. The only difference is that Sukuna is actually referred to as the Honored One, whereas Gojo refers to himself as the Honored One. Again, really showing that all of these influences on Gojo's life has indeed given him a god complex, if he is comparing himself to Buddha indirectly. Hints at the superiority that Gojo feels is shown in many of his statements where he actually talks about how he's grown tired of protecting the weak. I find this dialogue pretty interesting and shows that Gojo, in some instances, can be considered a morally gray character. Are curtains even necessary in the first place? Does it even matter if regular people see us? Geto responds, "Of course it matters. The containment of cursed spirits is of the utmost importance for the citizens' peace of mind. For that reason, keeping unseen threats confidential is important. Not only," Gojo interrupts him and says, Yeah, I gotcha. It's such a pain looking out for the weak." Geto responds with, "Society should protect the weak and keep the strong in check. You see, Satoru, Jujutsu exists to protect non-Jujutsu users." Finally, Gojo doubles down. "Being righteous? I hate that stuff." It gets to the point that Geto and Gojo are about to fight to settle their differences. It's pretty crazy that Gojo was so stubborn in his beliefs of not thinking he should need to protect the weak nor keep the strong in check that he's willing to fight his friend about it. Now, I will say that this is a younger version of Gojo, but it's not like this is him as a young child. He's certainly an older teenager. We know that he has matured at least a bit since this age, but he still has a superiority complex. This is shown in some of his encounters with other incredibly powerful characters as well. For example, when Gojo meets Joe Gogo, who we know is a special grade cursed spirit known for his power, yet Gojo refers to him as weak. Yet Sukuna, who at the very least should be a rival in power to Gojo, actually compliments Jogo's strength before he whoops his ass, showing that Sukuna is actually, in ways, far less cocky than Gojo. Even when asked if he can defeat a full 20-finger Sukuna, the man who reigned at the top of the golden age of Jujutsu sorcery and was feared by all, Gojo still believed that he would be able to put down the King of Curses. Which, that will probably be my very next Jujutsu Kaisen video, Gojo versus 20-finger Sukuna, and why I think it might be one of the most interesting matchups in all of JJK. But anyways, back to the topic at hand. There are many things that lead to Gojo's fall. One of the things that I particularly notice is his borderline obsession with overthrowing the higher-ups in the Jujutsu Society and having no regards of killing them if need be. This is due in part to the archaic ways of Jujutsu Society, as well as their genuine fear of him. Many of these higher-ups either would have wished for the many assassination attempts throughout Gojo's life to have been successful, others may have even participated in them too. Remember that when Gojo was sealed away by Kenjaku, and Japan was under threat from the now roaming cursed spirits, even though both regular Japanese society and Jujutsu society would have benefited from Gojo's presence, it was deemed an infraction for anyone to attempt to free Gojo from the prison realm. With so much facing against him, I worry for Gojo's sanity, and it may yet snap once again, like when faced with Toji. This would parallel a common occurrence both in our real world and in fiction. That is the trope of the rebel leader with an honest cause, who later becomes corrupted by the success and power and becomes nearly as bad as the force that they had rebelled against. As I mentioned earlier, I fully believe that there could be other ways that Gojo becomes the final villain, without him straight up being the one to fall to darkness. Like, there more so would being a forced fall or a manipulation with a cursed technique, more like an unconscious fall from grace. Gojo is not in control of it. I believe that it is certainly possible that the brain, Kenjaku, could seek out Gojo's body as a vessel. Sure, the JJK fanbook states that Kenjaku had never thought about using Gojo's body, but that was because he considered Gojo to be unbeatable, and thus it was useless to think about. But that doesn't mean that he wouldn't jump upon the opportunity if it were to present itself. If Kenjaku were able to take over Gojo's body and use both of their cursed techniques, he would become an incredibly threatening villain. Now, again, Gojo wasn't technically defeated, he was just sealed away, but this actually leads into a really interesting plot point that happened around a month ago. Sukuna was able to incarnate inside of Megumi's body, and remember, Gojo did say that not only does Megumi have the potential to surpass him, but he said that in the past, a 10 Shadows user was able to stalemate his ancestor, who wielded both Limitless and the 6 Eyes, just like Gojo. If this means that Sukuna now has the ability to beat Gojo straight up, then that makes it possible for Kenjaku to come in and take his body when he's vulnerable, and leading to possibly Kenjaku becoming the final boss within Gojo's body. And then, likely shortly after that, Sukuna, while in Megumi's body, will be defeated, and Yuji will get Sukuna back, and then the endgame final battle will be against Pseudo Gojo, with Megumi and Yuji, possibly Yuta and Hikari as well, fighting together to defeat possibly the most powerful villain in the entire history of Jujutsu Kaisen. Outside of Kenjaku taking over Gojo's body, there's another person that I could see find a way to take over his body and incarnate inside of him, and that would be Sukuna himself. I think this is probably the least likely though, but I wouldn't disagree that this would be incredibly interesting. Imagine what type of a menace that Sukuna would be if he had access to the 6 Eyes, on top of his already insane level of cursed energy and abilities. He'd already be unstoppable, but then stack on Limitless, you can't even touch Sukuna. And remember that Sukuna has a divine level of domain expansion, where instead of creating his own space, he actually just brings his own into the physical world. If he is this skilled with domains, then imagine what he would be able to do with Immeasurable Void to an even greater degree than Gojo could do. Again, I don't necessarily think this specific scenario is likely, because then it doesn't honor the opening of the video of it being a Sukuna versus Gojo scenario, as it would technically be Sukuna inside of Gojo. That is unless if Yuji was able to manifest many of Sukuna's powers even after he left him, but yeah, Sukuna inside of Gojo's body and gaining access to the 6 Eyes and his curse technique just exudes ultimate final boss energy. It feels like that would be the titanic, Thanos-like villain to cap off the story of Jujutsu Kaisen. Remember that Sukuna used to be a Jujutsu sorcerer. This sort of implies that he used to be a quote-unquote good guy, or at the very least, he held a position as a protector of non-Jujutsu sorcerers. Obviously something happened to him at some point, and that led to him becoming a cursed object and a cursed spirit known as the King of Curses, Ryomen Sukuna. We also know that Ryumen Sukuna has a disdain for Jujutsu sorcerers. This is prevalent from the first time we saw him fight Gojo all the way back in chapter 2 of the manga when he showed his disgust of sorcerers. I think it's possible that Sukuna was the Gojo equivalent back in the golden age of Jujutsu sorcery. Sukuna didn't get along with the Jujutsu higher-ups, just like Gojo doesn't now. The Jujutsu higher-ups didn't want Sukuna to continue, he was too powerful. It is possible that the hierarchy of the golden age of Jujutsu sorcery is ultimately what led to the cause of Sukuna going from the honored one to the disgraced one. Ultimately, he was attacked by waves of Jujutsu sorcerers, and they couldn't even kill him. Instead, his indestructible fingers lived on to this day as cursed objects. The way that Jujutsu society views Gojo's power could be an interesting parallel to Sukuna's possible backstory. Overall, I do think the most interesting part of this theory of mine would be if because of Gojo's enhanced understanding of the world due to Six Eyes, and because of the limitless information he can access, pairing that with his own understanding of his psychology that can easily show cracks in it, and this is part of the reason he held such stern beliefs that Yuji, Megumi, Yuta, and Hakari all had the ability to surpass him, and they needed to. Gojo has so much hope in these young sorcerers because he knows that one day, he himself may become the obstacle that stands in the way of progressing Jujutsu society. With that being said, please let me know what you guys think of my theory. I do recognize that there isn't a lot of hard evidence, it's more so just circumstantial and trying to look at the structure of JJK thematically, but it is something that I have been thinking about for a while, and I genuinely believe that it's a possible outcome. I hope you guys do enjoy my return to making Jujutsu Kaisen videos once again. And I know it's been like 2 years since I've done consistent Jujutsu Kaisen videos, but I absolutely love the direction of the series right now, and I have both the mental capacity and the mindset to tackle making content on more than just one series. Of course, Black Clover is always going to be the series that I make the most videos on, but I have been wanting to branch out for a long time now. My next JJK video will be discussing 20 Finger Sukuna versus Gojo and who would likely win that fight, and I have some other JJK videos in the works as well, but please let me know if you have any other video topics revolving around JJK you'd want me to cover, or even something like cross-verse discussions between Black Clover and JJK. Stay tuned everyone, and I also have a record of Ragnarok video in the works as well. With that being said, thanks for the support, leave a like and subscribe, and don't forget to follow me on Twitter and join my Discord, both linked below in the description. Peace out.